Hello, friends. My name is Host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People and a typologist. This video is called Things About Functions That Might Be Measured. You could call it function metrics, maybe, function vectors. I couldn't figure out exactly what word I wanted to use, so I called it Things About Functions That Might Be Measured. FI. You see each of these functions, the second thing there tells you whether it's communicative or expressive, and whether it's action, deliberation, observation, or interface. So FI is an experiential deciding function, an experiential deliberation function. And the things that it does, basically what makes up FI and what you might in theory measure, is the capacity to parse importance. In other words, to have multiple things that are important to you and give each of them the right amount of attention. The second aspect of FI that might, in theory, be measured is harm prevention. The ability and willingness and desire and habit of trying to prevent, considering harm that might come to things that are mostly people that you love and pets and stuff like that. How much attention do you pay towards harm prevention? And then the third element there is wait duration. So for somebody who has a habit of using introverted feeling as a primary means of paying attention, they're going to have an acute understanding how feelings impacts persist over time, and how a bad decision now may have lasting consequences in terms of carrying around the weight of the bad feelings. Now, exactly how you would measure these things, I'm not saying I know how to measure these things exactly, but I'm saying these are aspects of a function that might be measured. Introverted thinking is the communicative deliberation function. It's the other kind of deliberation function. This one's kind of straightforward. Accuracy on deductive reasoning problems type things. Complexity, the ability to be accurate with increasingly complex problems, and speed, how quickly you can be accurate. FE is a little bit more complicated, but it's the communicative interface function. Uno, getting in trouble. I've noted the following quality that seems to be a fundamental difference between FE and FI people. FE people believe in getting in trouble. And depending on where it is in your stack, but I think no matter where it is in the front stack, if you're FE, you're likely to think, I'm at risk of getting in trouble. Which is kind of ridiculous, but we also think that we can get others in trouble. Whatever that means, right? Whereas FI people don't accept that jurisdictional claim by the group, I guess you might say. So the amount of attention and thought towards getting in trouble and which direction it goes in seems to be a quality of FE that might be measured. For example, Rachel's fretting frequently enough that she might be getting in trouble, in the sense that I'm not happy, and I'm frequently fretting concurrently that I might be getting in trouble, which is to say that she's not happy with me about something. Okay, proactivity and responsiveness are the two kinds of action that are implicit to the interface function, which is a subject function, that is to say, a way of taking action, sort of. The proactive kind of FE is the remembering people's birthdays and reaching out to people and stuff like that. The responsive kind of FE is more real time and just making sure that the mood, you're not you're responsive to mood things and emotional things that others are expressing. Okay, TE, experiential interface function. So Uno, I'm going to put down London Tower. Sean suggested to me, and I after playing with it and looking at it and reading this comment and thinking about it some, I think it's an excellent way to test one aspect of TE, which is you have these stacks of circles, and you want to make it look like the example one, but you want to try to plan ahead of time. You're going to move this here first, then this, then this, then this here, in order to make room for that, and then I'll put that over there, and blah, blah, blah. You want to have a plan ahead of time. Although you could just randomly do it until something opens up or whatever. It's not difficult to do, but the challenge is, can you get the most effective plan of how to get there, just looking at it initially without playing around with it? And so that potentially is a, I think what I'm trying to get at is that skill there is one part of TE, and it can be tested. Ordination is the other half of that, which is like FE is both kinds of it's a kind of action, really, in some sense. At least some aspect of it is. Same with TE. Ordination is the capacity to explain to others how to break something into steps. And then in the third, teleologicalness, that means the tendency of an individual to frame things through express purpose. I think you could potentially measure how commonly a person needs a matter explained via a teleological frame to understand it meaningfully, in which case that's a TE thing. SI is the experiential observation function. So you've got amount of detail, use of examples, and body awareness. Amount of detail means really the capacity to be irrelevant. So SI, to the extent that NI focuses on what is relevant, SI doesn't. It's the subjective experiential observation function. It observes, but doesn't pay any attention to relevance, except insofar as you observed it makes it relevant. And so, as a consequence, I can tell you all kinds of totally meaningless details about what I did yesterday, or any kind of anecdote I can fill with details to the brim. I've got endless amounts of details from little moments that I happen to have recorded somehow in my brain, you know? But those things aren't relevant, really, in any meaningful sense. They're not salient, you could say, and they're not determinate. So that's the downside of SI, but it's not. I don't mean to be making this normative. Anyway, that's what I mean by detail, is irrelevant detail. And use of examples. For SI people, they explain concepts by providing examples, and they understand concepts by hearing examples, by and large. Now, I need that least as among SI types, or ENTPs do, because it's fourth. So we're pretty comfortable with dealing with things with concepts without having them concretized as examples. But if we do ever need further explication, I will always say, well, can you give me an example? So, okay, that's that for SI. And then body awareness. This one is, it's hard. I don't know exactly how you test it, but it's very evident to me in talking to Rachel how completely unconscious she is about her experiential body stuff. When I'm trying to ask her how her medical symptoms are and how her body's feeling, it's like my what is doing what now? So, whereas like if you look at an ISTJ or an ISFJ in a typing session, chances are they have put a lot of, especially ISTJs, have put attention into making sure their place that they're going to be for an hour is comfortable, which is a sensible enough thing to do, right? Like, I was sitting here earlier, I'm sitting in this chair in this new setup. So there's nothing in front of me to put the mouse and the keyboard on. So I'm constantly reaching behind me to this table over here to do shit on. And my whole arm and shoulder is getting sorer and sorer by the day, because I haven't. I just sort of yesterday realized that that's why my arm is getting sore. That's fourth slot body awareness. NI is the communicative observation function. Its uno is concision. That is to say, when you ask somebody a question, how long and complicated of an answer do they give you? How much detail? It's the opposite of detail, right? Concision is relevance. Salience is the most relevant. So, in other words, it's like determinateness. There's concision, which is to say a general prioritization of including only those things that are relevant. Then there's salience, determining correctly which things are most relevant. And then lastly, there's correctness, which is to say, if we're testing for NI, I can test by saying there's a guy going into the mountains. He's got a mule and a floppy hat and some pots and pans and a pickaxe and a big beard and he's grizzled. What is he? And the answer is prospector. If you say the answer is chef, that's NI wrong. Okay? No, it's not right and wrong in the same way that TI can be right and wrong because it's not conditional, right? But the point is, it's still wrong to call him a chef. He's a prospector. For SE, it's the experiential action function. So the qualities of it or aspects of it include pulling the trigger on shit. In other words, how likely are you to over-hesitate and miss an opportunity? SE is an intentional manner that tries to avoid that. Follow-through is the other aspect of SE. Now, this is the one that people get hung up on a lot when I try to explain it or something, because people think of follow-through as a long-term thing. But if you ask an ESTP the following scenario. Last night, you and your buddies were out. You and your best friend, Paul, or something, were out drinking, and when it was time to go home, you said, Paul, you're too drunk to drive home. But Paul said, but I need my car at 7 in the morning. And he said, look, just take an Uber home. I will bring you your car tomorrow morning by 6:45. And it's like 2 in the morning right now, okay? The ESTP will follow through on doing that. They will not. It may be difficult to get them to commit to doing that because they understand the nature of following through. But if they do commit to it, they will follow through on it. They won't sleep through their alarm and not get you your car. And note that it's not a big long-term thing, right? It's I'm going to have to get 4 hours of sleep, get up, take this guy's car to him, come back and go back to bed, you know. Matching. So this matching thing relates to actually use of physical force. So socionics calls SE force. Force is one of the vectors. Actual physical force is a vector in extroverted sensing. For example, when I went to the subway with Rachel one day, and we clearly had an SE polar person who was new at the job, who did not know how hard to push things, basically. Like, when he opened the bread, he's just like, I push it too hard. When he put the meat down, he's like, like he hadn't. And so the sandwich is all like, you know, he was trying to do, and he's SE polar, and watching him was astonishing. It's like he didn't know how to use his hands or something. Of course, over time, he would practice that job, I'm sure, and get the hang of it. And that's how SI works as a workaround for SE polar is you may not know how to do it, but if you practice doing it all the time, then you'll find that you have done it. So that's what I mean by matching, is matching the amount of force and or pressure needed to create the right amount of impact and not using too much or too little. Extroverted intuition. So this is the communicative action function, and you can measure it in terms of disparateness. How how wildly different things are from each other. So a scenario I gave in the live stream last night was something like, there's an old fisherman who's spending time with Nobel Prize scientists on a banana farm underneath the ocean as part of the opening ceremonies for the Beijing Olympics in 2022. So those are things that are far apart from each other conceptually. You know, even though they're all places and people and stuff, they're still, they don't go together, right? Like salmon and ice cream. So to the extent that people are able to get further apart from each other, that's an indication of more high up NE, right? Quantity of randomness is another vector there, which is, you know, like how many different reasons can I think of from that my cat might want to go outside again, even though she just came inside? Number one, she doesn't want me to be able to sit here and finish this video in peace. Number two, she just likes to see the door open and close. Number three, she saw a leaf she wants to reinvestigate outside. Number four, she plans to go outside, check the weather, and come right back inside. Number five, I could do that for infinity, right? That's just quantity of random. How many of them are relevant or good? It doesn't matter. It's just quantity of random. And then the last one is put on the spot, which is, as I explained to an ISFJ in the stream last night, just because I'm saying INTPs, ENTPs are sort of naturally the intellectuals of certainly the Alpha Quadra and maybe, you know, the entire 16 types. Intellectualism, like anything else, has two expressions. It expresses as an identity quality that sticks to you over time, but it's not meaningful or useful in any sense like that. Whereas in any given instance, anybody can be the most correct or intellectual, right? If I'm not a chef, but if I have a contest with a super trained chef who cooks all the time, but the contest is to make a burger, and it might just come out that I nail my burger. You know, I know how to barbecue a little bit, and sometimes I nail it, and sometimes I don't, and it's hit and miss, right? So I nail this one, and it turns out that on this occasion, the judges picked my burger over this fancy chef who's an official cook who's been cooking for years. In that instance, I'm the better cook, but I'm not a better cook, right? So that's how a lot of shit is. Just because somebody's the best chef in the world doesn't mean in this instance you won't make a better hamburger than them. And that's why we have to think of these kind of vectors like this that can be tested but aren't inclusive of all the function that can be tested. So that way we don't mistake the fact that Joe made the best hamburger as evidence for Joe's an excellent chef. Okay, so thank you for watching, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. I hope this wasn't too long. 18 minutes is a little long, but hopefully you enjoyed it.